Thank you, David. Still on the climate talks, African leaders want effects of climate change addressed as a matter of urgency. Whereas many talked about the need to use a different approach in pushing for financing, concern is being raised over continued displacements as the search for food and water for people and animals continues. Dennis Aseto had that story.
Climate change has seen several demographies affected, such that we have climate immigrants that others refer to as climate refugees. From Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, and many other countries, many continue to move to survive, a factor that is expected to continue if climate change is not addressed. Amy Pope, the International Organization for Migration Director General-elect, stressed the need for financing.
We know that climate change is going to displace millions of people. Already just this year, 7.5 million people have been displaced in sub-Saharan Africa alone. You fast forward to 2050 and we're looking at another 100 million people who will likely be displaced.
She adds that world leaders and stakeholders must speak in one voice. Some leaders called for inclusion of the private sector in this endeavor.
It's enormously important. We know that climate will force people to move. If they can't farm, if they can't feed their livestock, if they have no home because a storm has destroyed it, people will move. That is normal. It is a typical human adaptation strategy. Now, our goal is to work with governments to start to think proactively. How do we help communities to be more resilient? How do we ensure that people have the skills they need to get the jobs of the future? This requires some forward thinking, it requires creative solutions, and the involvement of an entire society.
Meanwhile, the International Finance Corporation Director for East Africa, Mary Porter, has called for an all-inclusive approach in addressing climate change issues.
I think, Dennis, first off, already you have a lot of companies, investors right here. I saw them last night at the Kenya International Chamber of Commerce. They're brimming with ideas and experiences. I think now the question is, how do you scale? And I think institutions like mine and other development finance institutions need to come in and partner with the entrepreneurs in Africa to complement the efforts that the government is making.
Elsewhere, Food and Agriculture Organization Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Africa, Abebe Haley Gabriel, says smart agriculture is critical for food security. Sentiments shared by Kala Mukavi, FAO representative in Kenya.
This is about adaptation to climate change, in other words. And this is done in a number of ways, starting from making sure that farmers get the right kind of seeds, but also get the means to protect their crops as well as their livestock.
We need this paradigm shift for emergency after emergency. So what is really important is to work very closely with the farmers to build resilience so that they can really sustain to shocks.
The issue of African debt was also captured during talks, many calling for rejigging of the debt by developed nations. For KTN News, I'm Dennis Aseto.
As the Africa Climate Summit comes to a close tomorrow, health experts are warning